Anyway, if you like this sort of thing, please subscribe, give us a like if you think that's appropriate, or put a comment. That does help push the video out to a wider audience. That's why people keep asking to do that. Anyway, so now let's get to some of the disadvantages, and I did struggle actually with my list of disadvantages to get to 10. But anyway, so the basically number one I've got here, it's basically inconvenient because you've got to keep messing about charging it up, whether it's at home or outside or whatever. And to fill up a car with petrol or diesel, it takes 3 minutes every however often, and it just if you have to queue at the petrol station, obviously. But anyway, it's inconvenient compared to a petrol or diesel car. Two, it's expensive in a different way. The main motoring expense, if you've had a car, the main motoring expense is depreciation. Whether it's petrol, diesel, electric, it doesn't matter. The main thing, the main cost of running a car is depreciation. There is no doubt about that. And there are very select cars that don't depreciate much, which is some very high performance. I think it's a Porsche GT3 RS. There's some very high performance cars that don't depreciate, but there's not many of them. Most of those do. The other way of avoiding all that is to get a car about £1,000, and it's very risky. I have done that, and it's you then pay a little bit in repairs and whatever to keep it going, but then you avoid the depreciation because it's still worth £1,000. And I've done that a few times, and it's worked out all right. It's kind of saved me a lot of money. Paid some repairs on one car, and whatever I paid, it did actually work out. It was cheaper than having a new car at the time, so didn't have it for a long. It was sort of an in between thing. But anyway, that's the electric cars at the moment. They absolutely depreciate like an absolute stone. There's no doubt. Look at an Auto Trader, a Jaguar I-Pace. They're an £80,000 car, and now you can get them for. I think I saw one the other day for £10,000, and there's loads of problems with those. I was thinking of getting one. I definitely am not thinking of getting one because there's loads of issues with that, and that's an older like car of the year in 2020. But now I just wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. So although depreciation is a thing, I don't think it's going to be a thing in the future because some of the prices coming in of the Chinese cars, they're coming in at a much lower retail price, and they will depreciate, but you're starting from a much lower. You're starting from a much lower point. And if you've only paid £20,000 or £15,000 in the first place, well, you haven't got much to lose. So anyway, that's that. Number three, the outside charging networks. If you can charge at home, that's fine. But if you outside, it's a complete and utter mess of different. Oh, there's. I've looked at all this. There's so many different companies that charge, and then you've got to have apps, and then the government have made it so that you've got to swipe, and you can use the Tesla network if you can. You're supposed to be able to use your swipe and any of them, but some of the Tesla ones you can't yet, and they will be adjusted so that you can in time. But it's just an absolute mess of different companies and different charge speeds. And then there's always also the problem when I speak to people is you go to there's supposed to be 4 chargers, and then 2 of them don't work, and then the 2 that work are fully occupied, or 4 of them work, and then when you go to have your go at charging, all of a sudden the charger doesn't work. It's out of order. I mean, and as I say, the whole thing's a mess. There's not enough chargers. There will be, again, that will be addressed. There will be more chargers, and hopefully they'll rationalise the whole network. And again, it goes back to the early electrics. If you look at household electrics in 1900 and all this, there was a number of different companies generating electricity and a load of different areas. So depending on which area you live, there's different voltages. I can't believe it. And so if you'd bought appliances, electric appliances in your home, and you lived, say, in London, and then you moved up to Manchester or something like this, you all your appliances probably wouldn't work. Well, they wouldn't work because it's a completely different voltages in different places. So it's an absolute nightmare, and it's different to the situation now. Back then, the reason that was there was no government interference at all, and it was all a completely free market, and that's why those systems developed as they did. And it's the same in America. And then when the government eventually got involved, then we've got the obviously 240 volt, and we've got the granny thing that came in, the granny plug, the 3-pin plug that came in 1947, I think it was. and to rationalise everything, so it's everything is the same. And thank goodness, thank goodness they did that. And I think something needs to be done on these charging networks. Everything needs to be the same. You have different companies if you want. I don't really see the point, to be honest. But so that's the charging network, and then this one is the expense. If you're at home, there's no doubt it's cheaper, cost less than petrol or diesel. But if you're out, it definitely costs more. Some of them are 80 pence a kilowatt. Your normal household electricity, the capped rate is 25p. Obviously, if you've got solar and all that, well, it's not costing you a lot at all. Just the cost of the equipment to put it all in. But outside, the prices seem to vary considerably. I worked out approximately if it's more than 42p a kilowatt, then it's more expensive than petrol or diesel. Obviously, all these prices go up and down, but some of them on the motorway, the electricity seems to be 79p a kilowatt. Well, I'm not being funny. That is way more expensive. And if you can't charge at home and you can only charge outside, and you don't get free charging at work or free charging somewhere, well, it's just going to cost you more to run your car than a petrol diesel car. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. So that's kind of a disadvantage. Is, as I say, the cost of the outside charging network. This is assuming it's all private. If you're working for a company and they don't care, then great. There's not the variety of cars with electric cars as there is with petrol or diesel cars. Obviously, petrol diesel cars have been around for a lot longer. So there's a much bigger variety of cars, and in the electric cars, there's not as many different types. That there is coming, and there's a company BYD, and they've got a load of different sizes of vehicles, SUVs, and all this sort of thing coming on. So that will change in the fullness of time, but it's not there yet. So the other disadvantage is the insurance is more expensive with an electric vehicle. Obviously, your circumstances are your circumstances, but if you look at the groupings of the car, look at the groupings of an equivalent petrol car. So I think a Tesla Model 3 was, I can't remember what the groupings were, but all electric cars generally they have a higher grouping than the equivalent petrol or diesel car. And the reason that is there's two things. One, the acceleration on the electric car is much more potentially more aggressive. Depends on how you drive, but it potentially can get you into trouble. And generally, that's what fast accelerating cars do. They don't get you out of trouble; they get you into trouble quicker. That's why lower powered petrol diesel cars, lower powered cars that can't go very fast and can't accelerate very fast, are lower groupings than high performance cars, those Porsches and Ferraris and all this nonsense. They're very powerful, very powerful cars, and in the wrong hands are very dangerous. Now, all of the electric cars accelerate quicker than petrol cars, so therefore they're much more likely to be involved in an accident, unfortunately. But the other reason is the battery pack can be written off. The car can be written off with a minor accident. If the battery pack is damaged, there's a risk that even if it's repaired, that it could have damaged the cells in a way that you'll get thermal runaway, and that's when it catches fire, and the fire can't be stopped. Now it could be if it's flooded, although these things are sealed from the factory, it could have been involved in a minor accident, and then if it's got flooded and that the water gets in and starts a short circuit, that's when you could get trouble. Anyway, all of that equates to there's much more likelihood of an electric vehicle being written off in an accident, and so that's a fact. That's why they're grouped higher, and obviously they're expensive to repair. I mean, the body repairs obviously exactly the same as any car, but that battery pack, if it gets written off, the whole car gets written off, and that's it. So there you are. That's a disadvantage. The other thing is they are complicated in a different way. People say they're simpler. They're not simpler at all. They obviously haven't got an engine as such, but they are complicated in a completely different way to a petrol or diesel car. And any car, all of these cars now have all got loads and loads of electronics in, and that's never a good idea, because obviously things corrode and stuff after time, and it goes wrong. So there's lots of examples in the second-hand market of the charging port can fail. I think the most common fault is that there's actually a 12-volt battery in a lot of them, and the 12-volt battery, if that fails, then yeah, well, it's not you just change it, but that can cause problems, as it could in a petrol car, but it's just more likely to happen. And then we come onto the cold weather range. Um, the range of the car is going to be that the manufacturer is going to state a particular range, and in the cold weather, this degrades only temporarily. So if it says the manufacturer states it has 300-mile range, you could wake up and find it's got a 230-mile range, because the battery's cold and so on. Once it warms up, the mileage comes back. There's no doubt about that. But if you haven't warmed the battery pack up anyway, it's just a disadvantage basically. You don't get that so much with petrol or diesel at all. You get less miles per gallon, obviously, but not to such a absolutely massive extent. And that comes to the other disadvantage. Obviously, the range anxiety. These battery cars, none of them. They say a so-called long range. I've got. I've probably said it before. If you've watched some of these videos, I've got a Volkswagen Passat. When the tank's full of diesel, I've got a range of 850 miles. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, I've never had a car with such a long range, and I never really thought about it. It's not a question that's ever been asked by me, and I'm sure most people. In the adverts, when I've looked at different cars in the past, it's never, ever been mentioned. Oh, this car's got a large fuel tank. You can go 1,000 miles or something like that. It's just not a question that's ever been asked. Um, but most of the battery cars, this is a problem at the moment. Hopefully, it'll improve. They keep saying it's going to improve. Um, the ranges are low. I mean, a lot of the time, if you're going short cold starts and short runs, it really doesn't matter. Back in the day, you think um, back in 1912, you had a 60-mile range, and then got some second-hand Nissan Leaf. That'll do about 60 miles, which is really not a lot. Um, but if that works, but obviously most of them, I don't know, they've got all different ranges, a few couple of 300 miles. And if you're going local, it doesn't really matter. Then you can go on journeys, but you just got to stop. And the journey, there's no doubt it's going to take you. You can obviously do massive long journeys, obviously, but it's just inconvenient. It's going to take you longer to do that equivalent journey than in a petrol or diesel cars. There's no doubt about it. So it's sort of an inconvenience, but I think it's range anxiety. It's more charge anxiety, the ability to charge. As I say, looking at all these things, I was going to do a review. I was going to do a review of some of the charging stops near me. I've looked at some of them, and some of the people, obviously, you can put on Google reviews. Absolutely shocking, absolutely shocking. Um, and the infrastructure, they're either very busy. It appears they're very busy. I'm going to go down there myself to see what it's actually like, because you can't really rely on reviews, but it just gives you an indication. There's one of them in an underground. I think it's 3 or 4 stories down in London, in Canary Wharf, and it's down below ground, and oh, crikey, I wouldn't fancy going there. To charge up at night time. It's just completely isolated, no mobile phone signal. I mean, it just sounds absolutely awful. But anyway, I hope this has been of some use. Thank you.